Guys, little Arthur here. So I think I want to take you through a newbie guide of installing a cold air intake. So I've got a new hobby now, which is basically modifying cars, well, specifically modifying my car, and just thought I'd mix it up a little bit and do something different. So, one of the things I've found is that entering this journey of learning about car mods and tuning, that still a lot of confusion out there with all the information out on the net. So I just recently did an install of a cold air intake, and it was actually a lot more work than I thought it would be, and just getting a lot of bad information out there. So I want to kind of do a newbies guide. This is not like really a step-by-step. It's just some general tips of installing a cold air intake, some of the things that I learned, because what I found is, it's hard to sometimes ask questions. People just sort of assume some baseline knowledge, and if you're someone like me who hasn't ever held a ratchet before in his life, then you're going to have a little bit more trouble than usual. But it's all a growing experience. So basically, before I get into some of the things that I learned in my journey, one of the reasons that I want to start modding is that, a couple months ago I thought to myself, I was thinking about buying a new car. My car is actually now coming to about 6 years old. And basically I thought to myself, maybe it makes sense to get a new car. And ultimately I decided, I don't really drive all that much these days, and the car's paid off. Still really enjoy driving the car. It's in pretty good condition for, almost 6 years old now. And basically, it just doesn't make sense. So I thought, just to keep things interesting, I'll learn about car modding. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and make the car that I like and want to drive, and adjust it accordingly. Because there's something I've really always respected, is people who know how to do that. And whether you're driving a Mercedes or a Subaru BRZ, I hate when people tend to have the same type of car as everyone else. So to me, it just says something very powerful about oneself when you take the time to actually create something that's individual. It's like creating a work of art, and I've really always admired it, even if it's just a Honda Civic that someone souped up. Yeah, I've always admired that. It's just something, like I said, I considered it like working on a piece of art. So I have a Tiburon, and it's a 2007 Tiburon, and I still really enjoy, like I said, driving the car. And it's a little bit dirty. I don't know if you can tell. Still got a bit of oil from my oily hands working on it. Just a day or two ago, I just installed the cold air intake, so could look a little bit cleaner right now. And so take you through some of the stuff that I learned. So for those of you who don't know what a cold air intake is, I'm sure a lot of you do, but again, this is newbie session here. Questions that you'd be afraid to ask, and people would be too snooty to answer. Basically, actually, hold on, let me get the trunk open here first. Yeah, so a cold air intake, what it does is it helps boost performance by increasing the amount of oxygen that flows to the engine. So that is a cold air intake, that little shiny thing right there. And basically, so it boosts power to the engine, and also improves the fuel efficiency. That is, if you don't drive it hard, you drive it the same way. And the stock intake, so this takes all the air to the engine, is pretty restrictive. And most stock intakes tend to be restrictive because they also allow the car to be quieter, which helps to sell cars in general, because most people don't want a noisy car. And there is also some potential dangers as well with cold air intake, is that if you live in places that flood, cold air intake might not be a good idea. Like, having said that, when I say flood, like you have 3 feet of water. Places like, some places in Texas or Florida or something like that where you might have that. And I live in Toronto, Canada. You don't really get stuff like that. Like, I don't know why anyone would be driving through 3 feet of water, and if you're revving the engine, say, 4 to 5,000 RPMs, driving it pretty hard, that's when you can get what they call hydro lock. But I don't think there's really anything to worry about in that type of environment here. So, the reason why it's not installed in every type of car. Everything has its pros and cons. Just like you have a turbocharger, you can have an issue here. So, I took out the stock intake here, and this is more free-flowing intake, and also it pulls air lower down from the ground. So it pulls in cold air, which is better because all the air here around the engine's all hot, and basically that's actually not more efficient. So it basically pulls air all the way down from here, basically, and so it's more efficient. So some of the tips that I learned: first and foremost, make sure you have the right tools. I learned that the hard way. Just even when I started the project, I started trying to take off some of the screws, and I was sitting there for like a good half an hour thinking, man, this nut is tight. And I just bought some basic ratchet set, from Canadian Tire. Spent like $20 on it, and I was sitting there just going nuts, like thinking, this is nuts. Like, I can't believe this nut is this tight. And thankfully, I have a friend actually who's pretty good with mechanical stuff, who, even though I installed everything myself, he talked me through things and could coach me on certain things. First of all, he paraded me, which was kind of funny. He was like, man, get yourself the right pair of tools, spend some money on it if you're going to work on your car. So, I actually went down, returned those tools, got a better set, more professional mechanic ratchet set, which was valued at $200, but I got on sale for about $80. And that just did the trick. All of a sudden, some of these tough screws, and again, I wouldn't know that. Like, to me, a screw is a screw. These pretty hands, these pretty hands are oily right now. They've never held a ratchet in their life. So, complete newbie. I'm documenting my experience and my journey, hoping that this will help some other people too. So yeah, make sure you have the right tools. I did, and there was other things too. I had to even jack up my car, which I was deathly afraid of at first to do, because I've never jacked up my car, and it wasn't half so bad. So my car actually comes with a jack. I didn't even know that. I actually went out and bought one, and I started going through my owner's manual. I was like, crap, this thing actually has a jack. And so returned that jack, and I had to also get some bricks to anchor the car so it doesn't roll away. But jacking the car can be a little bit dangerous. Get yourself a good pair of goggles. I learned that the hard way. I got hit in the face with oil a couple times. It was like a total cum shot, just right in my face. Not really, I'm exaggerating. That wasn't like a cum shot, but it was in my face, a couple times. And if it was things that were dangerous there, probably that could have been a little bit more detrimental. So you don't want to take precautions if you're working on some more critical stuff too. Gloves are important too, especially things like handling the battery. If you're touching the battery here, don't get it on your skin. The battery acid can be pretty dangerous on your skin. You have to wash it immediately. So get yourself some good gloves to work with. Also, your hands will get oily as hell, and sometimes you do have to take off the gloves to work with a little bit more precision. But on stuff that you can use gloves, do it. Get some gloves, and that will definitely make your hands a little bit cleaner. You can also pick up some cleaner. Actually, hold on, let me just go into my trunk here. Show you some other stuff that is necessary. Yeah, okay, so here's the ratchet set that I got. It's a lot better than what I had before. There's also this Armor All cleaning, which is really great for cleaning oil off your hands. Makes a big difference, like when you're working on stuff and then you get oil off your hands, because soap doesn't quite cut it. So anyways, yeah, so get yourself the right tools. Make sure you got everything that you need there, because you could be spending sometimes an hour and half an hour on stuff that can take 5 minutes, and you might think you have the right tools, but you actually don't. Um, Next lesson I learned basically working on this is that it's okay to use a little bit of force sometimes. Like these, at least the exterior parts are pretty robust, so like they don't always come off gently. And I was just afraid sometimes of breaking something. So like a good example is this valve right here. Like I was afraid of pulling that off too hard because I thought I was breaking something. So and some of the parts here. So this is the new intake, but when I was disassembling, a lot of the work for me came with disassembling the parts and not wanting to pull too hard. But a good example is there's these screws underneath here, and these screws were just giving me a lot of trouble. These can't see it, probably it's a little too dark, but I'll actually just find you a sample here. These plastic screws that were giving me a lot of problems actually. Let me just find it here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so these plastic screws will give me some issues. Like there's one time on the bottom of those panels, these screws were actually, I was turning them for like 20-30 minutes, and I'm thinking, man, this is not turning, and spraying it with WD-40, nothing was helping here. And again, talked to my friend, and he just said, man, you're just yank that crap, just pull it out, you're wasting time with that, and just buy some new ones. And came in the next day, put some WD-40, grabbed a pair of pliers and Phillips screwdrivers, stuck it in between, just yanked it out and saved myself a hell of a lot of time. But sometimes it's okay to use force. Again, I'm thinking of this as like working with IKEA furniture. The other thing is to read in between the lines. Most of the instructions are not literal. So this battery here, basically, it's like, it's basically just one step, could be like 5 steps. And I've never taken off a battery before, so, it's easy enough now, but obviously I had to go research that in itself. The instruction listed it as 1 step. Also, you got to read in between the lines. Some of the stuff in the instructions does not make any sense, or not the best way to do it. In some cases, they may just put it that being as a good way to do it because maybe it reduces their liabilities. So, prime example is these headlights. Basically, the instructions just say, you take off these 2 bolts here, and the headlights come off. However, that's all right with most of the versions of this car, but on my version here, there's actually this 3rd bolt right here, which it doesn't come off until you see that, and it's not easily visible. You have to actually open this panel up here first, and then actually take off the bolts. And I had to do a bit of research to find out where's this other bolt here that's holding down the headlight, which you need to take out the headlight to be able to get the intake in further down and have some room to work with. The other prime example was the instructions tell me to actually take off the bumpers, so you can actually then take the intake in and all the way into here and have some room to work. Mainly the first pull out the resonator. The resonator is blocking the way. That's the stock part there, and the resonator basically quietens and silences the car. So anyways, so I looked at, when I actually opened up the headlight and looked at where the bumper screws were, they're on a really weird angle, and there's really super tight space, and I was like, there's no way I'll be able to get that off easily without creating a mess. And then when I went on the net, most people said, you know what, you don't need to do that. You just basically bring the resonator from underneath the car, and so you just take off this panel here, actually, there's underneath, and pull from the bottom. So that's where I actually had to jack up the car, pull out the resonator from underneath. So don't take anything, things so literally. As per instructions, which I learned. Again, this is me working on IKEA furniture to working on cars, which is a big difference. I take things pretty literal, or it's like working with computers. As a computer programmer, you know, I take things very logically and literally, and you know, don't take it with a grain of salt. And you know, some of this stuff is just common sense. You just gotta utilize common sense here. So, anyways, so yeah, this is my first experience here. Basically, like I said, I hope it gives you guys some down earth tips if you're just getting into modding. Obviously, there's some more advanced, you know, tips out there, but this is for just you know, someone like myself who, you know, these are things that people don't always tell you in between the lines, and you're sort of afraid to ask. I'll probably be documenting some of my other experiences of modding that I'll do, and you know, again, just sharing my experiences. It might help some other people out. So my next project's probably going to be a short shifter, and then I'm probably also going to change up the exhaust, which that I'll probably take to shop to do it correctly, because if there's welding and stuff like that involved, I might get the car lowered again. That will probably take to shop as well. Lambo doors as well. I'm thinking about doing that as well. So yeah, just, you know, I'm going to document my experiences after I've done the projects and the lessons that I've learned. So yeah, man, happy modding. So if you want, we can actually just take a step outside and actually hear what the cold air intake sounds like. So give me a second here. Sorry, I just wanted to clean off my hands. There was no point in seeing me do that. So let's just roll down the windows here a little bit. Turn the car on. Alright, so that sounds pretty normal. So you can hear, I don't know if you can hear a little bit, it's kind of like a vacuum sound, which is the intake taking in the air here. So revving up a little bit. Just get some lights on. It's got a nice throaty sound there going. So I mean, the sound alone is just worth it. I mean, you do get a good, nice little decent boost in performance on the throttle, but you know, most people just like the sound in itself, right? So, anyways, I will post more of my adventures in modding. Happy modding.
Ah!